Hi everyone, welcome to SEADE's second reverse speech. I will start in a few minutes, just time for everyone to arrive. Uh, but stay tuned, we'll start in a moment. All right, let's start anyway. The beginning of today is me presenting, so if people miss it, it's a little bit less important. So we're here today in the context of the SEEDE project. So the SEEDE project, very quickly, is aimed at increasing research collaboration between Europe and Africa. And so what we are doing as Eurocredit and as Bpifrance is to help research-based companies raising funds and finding the supports that they want and they need in order to reach new markets and actually attain commercial traction. So today we have three speakers, but before jumping into it, let me give you a little bit more context about SEEDE. As I said, we're here to promote research and innovation ecosystems and more importantly, collaboration. We are trying to gather various projects that have been done in the past and to gather them all on, let's say, under one umbrella. We have 8 partners that are both located in Africa and Europe, uh, and 4 pillars. Now, the one that we're most interested in today, of course, is the pillar 3, is the route to market one, and that's why we introduce you to different resources that are available to you for route to market activities. We have other activities under this pillar uh, for for you to know. So we're having bootcamp trainings that are going to start in April. Also, there's going to be one in Senegal and one in South Africa and one in Ghana. We have various webinars. We did finish the learning expeditions in Ghana, Kenya, Senegal, South Africa. Some more self-learning programs are going to come. The twinning program is ongoing for research institutions and universities to connect and to exchange, and a lot more. You might have heard about the pitching sessions as well, and today we are here for the reverse pitching session. The best way for you to know about everything that is happening is to join the community on Eurocredit, both the Enriching Africa community and the SEEDE, I'd say, label. But you can also reach out to me or Eric as part of the Bpifrance team. I'll let you here with um, the QR code for joining the community for a few seconds. And then we start with Penelope that is going to introduce her activities. Just for you know, for the following of the session. So we first begin with an introduction by each of the speakers of the activities or of what they have to offer to the ecosystem. And then we have a few more specific questions, and we won't have today a Q&A, like a dedicated Q&A section, but the Q&A box is open, so don't hesitate, either in the chat, either in the Q&A session, to ask your questions, and the speaker will be happy to answer them directly in the chat. And then, without further ado, I think Penelope, you can jump in.
Perfect. Thank you, Antoine. Let me just share my screen. Let me find it. Can everyone see my screen?
At least I can.
Do you only see the presentation, or do you also see your everyone?
Oh no, I only see the presentation.
Amazing. Perfect. So hello everyone. Thank you, Antoine, for the introduction. So I'm Penelope Terranova. I'm Chief Platform Officer at Digital Africa. And I'm just gonna, do a quick presentation to kind of introduce what we do at Digital Africa. So we basically, through investment and support of startups, we want to unlock success for startups on the continent, and specifically in African underserved ecosystems. So I won't go too much into a story. We're not that old, but not that young either. Digital Africa was created in 2018. And we lived different lives, and we've refocused most of our activities towards investment and support to startups in the past year and a half. Specifically since we joined the AFD group. AFD is Agence Française de Développement, the French development agency, and we're a subsidiary to Proparco, who you might have heard of. To give a little bit of context and why we focus on underserved markets, we know that most of the tech funding today on the continent goes to the big four, namely Nigeria, Egypt, South Africa, and Kenya. And that's where most of the funding goes. That's where we see a lot of startup support ecosystem, etc. So there's a big disparity that we identify here with the rest of the continent. Just here, a quick slide that kind of shows the difference between the big four and the rest of Africa, with the amount of actors concentrated in only 4 countries and a couple of actors that are in other countries. And we've taken the decision to try to focus our investment towards a list of 18 priority countries, which you can see on this slide. These 18 priority countries represent less than 13% of total startup funding, despite representing nearly 50% of the total population of the continent. And we've have different tiers actually on how we can interact and support and invest in those different countries. And so I've mentioned we're a subsidiary to Proparco, so we have we can leverage through our network, the vast network of AFD and Proparco offices throughout the continent, as well as our vast network of partners. We today have a network of 65 plus SSO partners, so startup support organizations throughout the continent with which we collaborate on a regular basis. We also do a lot of co-investment with renowned VCs and other type of structures in the continent. And maybe this is the slide that explains best what we do at Digital Africa. We have one active fund and one fund that we're in the process of building. So the active fund that we have is called SEADE. SEADE is a fund that delivers tickets from 20K to 100K maximum tickets to pre-seed and seed startups. The contract is through a safe contract, and so we have a call for applications that is always open when we go to a new country, or sometimes we go out and we organize challenges where we have pitching competitions, etc. And then the startups that have applied to Digital Africa just go to a classic process of due diligence, investment committees, etc. Once the startup enters our portfolio, we have our Digital Africa platform support system. It's not a real platform. It's just a way of symbolizing the service offer, the technical assistance offer that we provide, which is a mix of access to expertise, mentors, tools, and a wide range of opportunities that go from connections and network and to visibility. So our main objective is to back founders in their journey and try to take them and help them take them to the next stage. And maybe I'll just finish with this slide. We currently have, it's not 48 since this week we had another startup joining our portfolio. We have 49 companies in our portfolio in 13 countries. Actually, in 2024, we were one of the most active VCs on the continent. We might not give the biggest ticket size because we go up to 100K, but we had more than 23 deals. I think it was 23 or 24 30 deals in 2024. And yeah, maybe I'll leave it here. I'm happy to answer to any questions on the chat and stop here to leave time for my colleagues. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Penelope. And yes, don't hesitate to ask questions because I'm sure Penelope has a lot more to say. So yeah, don't hesitate to just write them in the chat so she can answer. In the meantime, we'll hear Fanta.
Fantastic. Can you see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you so much, Bpifrance, for having us. It feels good to be back, considering our last event with you is hosting the Zeno Corporation, which is one of our portfolio companies at the end of last year, and the fundraising is continuing to go well for the pre-Series A. So we're super appreciative of this partnership. So I'm Fanta, and I'm the Senior Associate at Seedstar's Africa Ventures. And we are an $80 million fund focused on early stage venture capital, and we're investing in high growth companies. But our participation and support for founders does not stop at our check because our focus is on the seed to Series A level, of which there is a lot of need for support. So for instance, to go from seed to Series A, around 5% of founders in Africa are able to do so, whereas the conversion rate is around 15% for founders in Europe. So there's a huge need for the kinds of checks that we write, of which I'll go into more detail in a bit, but our focus is really on championing founders in Pan-African markets and also ensuring that they're able to grow. So my personal background is that I've championed founders in the US, in South Africa that are Pan-African oriented, and also worked with accelerators that have had a global focus. So I bring that background and perspective into investing. But our team has around 45 years of investment experience and has really seen it all. They've seen it all because they have been former founders, they're former management consultants, investors who have been able to see the life cycle of several different companies as a result of that experience. And so we're able to bring that to serve our founders. Towards the bottom of the slide, this is our current portfolio, which are companies we've backed. And we stand by these founders and their mission to make an impact from everywhere from increasing internet access at an affordable rate to increasing access to financial markets, which is what Zeno does, or for those in the agricultural space to gain better access to supply chains and also to provide better data quality on utility management. So our founders really do a breadth of things, and the reason for that is because we are sector agnostic. So for how we identify the companies that we invest in, it's pretty much has to be in line with our investment thesis, which is what you see on the left side of the slide. So our investment approach is we like to focus on seed to Series A founders. As a result, we write $250K to $2 million checks for their first investment, but we allocate funding for follow-on, which can be up to 5 million. So we like to continue to work with our founders over a span of time. So we might write that first seed check and then come back in the Series A round or in a Series B round. And it's important to us to be able to lead or be a co-lead investor and support the founders, whether it's from a governance perspective or just having regular calls with them as they go through, the journey of growing and scaling, which, isn't always the easiest and could use support on. And then we focus on sub-Saharan Africa with a target of 30% in the Francophone region. So we're quite bullish on Francophone Africa. There's a lot of opportunity there, especially with the common currency in the market. And it's important to us to be able to see how we can add value. So it is meant to be a mutually beneficial relationship. And so we want to be able to provide that support. And if we're not able to, then maybe it's not a fit. As far as what we're looking for talented and ambitious teams. So teams who are scrappy and who have been committed to the problem that they're solving. We're looking for products or services that have proven demand. So there is already a customer base and clients that the company has established. The innovation can be either offline or online. So that means that we're not only funding technology companies. And a solid unit economics is important to us. So in order for the company to be profitable and to scale in the long term, having that be clear and showing that that is integral to the business is also key. And we're looking for post-revenue companies with demonstrated growth, which usually comes with having customers and having a solid unit economics. So the way that we work closely with our founders is it ranges. So when we first identify a company we want to invest in, we have a 100-day plan that we outline, and we do so with the founder so that we can look at how we can support them over that first 90 days. So like many of us, there's like a 90-day review period with our roles, right? And so this is what we like to offer to our founders, just a 90-day review period equivalent that allows for their growth. So it's different from an assessment rather, but more of an implementation plan to really just get the company the support that it needs. So we're very attentive and supporting during this time frame. We also provide governance support. So we don't just write checks, but we like to support the founder as a board member, and many of the companies that we've invested in, we've been able to help with business development and strategic growth and partnerships as a result of really knowing what's going on in the company through our regular cadence and check-ins with the founders. And then next, we're a part of the Seedstars network. So Seedstars has been around since 2012 and across different emerging markets. And part of what Seedstars offers is an accelerator program for companies to grow. And this includes partnership with global consulting firms such as Accenture and a number of organizations from HubSpot to Google to Amazon Web Services, Bloomberg, you name it. So we have this network of experts who support our founders, but we also, as a result of this being a part of the Seedstars network, we're able to provide PR support. So we have the ability to get our founders featured in articles, of which helps with investment and awareness of the brand of the company. And companies are also able to save up to $200,000 USD equivalent on expenses that are essential to their business. And this includes from co-working spaces to tools that the company might use internally. We also provide technical assistance from our main funder, which is the European Investment Bank, which can consult with our companies and can lead to millions in contracts, of which we've seen with one of our core companies, Beacon Power Services, focused on utility management. And then finally, strategic partnerships is a big part of what we do. So putting our founders in touch with customers and partners that can improve the company's value add and proposition in the market. And another example of that, of how we've done that outside of Beacon Power Services for Shamba Pride, is linking the agricultural value chain for this company to international suppliers, and also connecting them with the bank in Kenya to provide the agrovets that they work with access to credit. So it's really important to us to prove that type of value for our founders. And then finally, we're backed by a leading private equity platform, which allows us to use those resources as needed for our founders. So yeah, that's our high level, and great to meet you all. Looking forward to learning about your companies in the chat and continuing a conversation around how Seedstars can support you.
Thanks a lot, Fanta. And you might be able to talk a little bit more about that after. But before that, I'll let Jeanne introduce Innovide and what it's doing in collaboration with Africa.
Yes, hello everyone. Let me share my screen. So my name is Jeanne Andrade. I work in the innovation department of Bpifrance, and I'm in charge of our international R&D cooperation. So let me introduce you to this InnoWild program, which is a program initiated by the Eureka network, which is an international R&D network that France is a part of. And this network aims to support international collaborative R&D through various programs. And there is this one program called InnoWide, which is a part of the EU Partnership on Innovative SMEs. So it's co-funded by the European Commission. And the goal is to support SMEs from European Union member states in their internationalization efforts by funding their market feasibility projects in collaboration with partners. So this program, as I said, it aims at SMEs from Europe, but the interest for African companies is that for European companies interested in this program, they have to find a partner, so a subcontractor in their target country, which for a lot of them are countries part of the African continent. So they have to find a subcontractor there to help them in their project. It can be a various thing that I will mention after, and they receive money to conduct this project. And so this money goes to the subcontractor then who is going to accomplish some tasks. So how does this work? Basically, we have a total budget for this whole financial period, which is around 5 years, where we're going to support around 400 projects through a few different calls. So as I said, the objective is to either form cross-continental partnerships. They can be R&D partnerships or business partnerships, but it can also help companies check whether their product or their process is adapted to their target market. So we have a lot of companies in France that are interested in cooperating with African companies in various formats. We see a lot of interest for R&D cooperation, but there is of course also business cooperation. This program can cover both of these needs by helping French, in our case of course French SMEs, to access these new markets. And so for African companies, the opportunity there is to work with these innovators. You will get all the slides, so I won't go too much into details, but basically InnoWide is very useful either for post R&D commercialization check, but also for future R&D if you want to assess a future partnership. The projects that we look for are mainly technical, market, legal assessments. It can also be, as I said, the preliminary phase for a future R&D project. So the African company, their interest in this program is to be the company that will realize these assessments for the French company, and so they can get funding for that. Here you have the eligibility conditions. So as you can see, the French companies can have a grant of maximum 60,000 euros. And as I said, this money is going to be used to pay the subcontractor in the target country. So it doesn't have to be Africa as a continent, but we see a lot of interest, of course, from our companies. So this is the application process, which is for the SMEs that want to participate. You will get the slide, but basically, if you're a company in Africa, the good thing for you can be to participate on the platform, to look for SMEs that are looking for your services, and that way you can collaborate with them and enter the contest. You can get all the information here. And the evaluation process takes a few months. So basically, you have a jury that is going to evaluate all the proposals. And then the winners in the ranking list will get the funding directly from Eureka through the European Commission. And then the project can start. These are very short projects, around 6 months. So it's definitely not one of these big R&D projects that we also encourage, but this program is more for short projects to assess a target market. And here you have the criteria to evaluate the proposal. As you can see, we have 3 main criteria: excellence, impact, and implementation. And that's how we can evaluate the proposals and make sure that the partnership between in our case, the French company and the African company is going to benefit both of them, and hopefully enter then in more successful partnerships in the future. So I don't want to be too long, so thank you very much for your attention, and I remain available should you have any question.
Thanks a lot, Jeanne. So yeah, if you have more questions about your and why, don't hesitate to write in the chat. I'm sure Jeanne will be able to answer. Now let's have a short discussion. Maybe I have first questions about challenges for early stage startups in Africa. And maybe I ask Penelope first. So according to you, and very broadly, what are the main challenges that early stage startups in sub-Saharan Africa face, and what do you as Digital Africa do to support them, and maybe how do you see that evolving over the next years?
Yes, thank you. So I think the challenge for startups in sub-Saharan Africa is quite similar to challenges that startups face in general. Is just access to funding is the biggest challenge. So we've seen that funding has grown, even if the last year is not necessarily representative of this growth, but there's more capital going towards the continent. However, as I was saying in my presentation, it's still very localized to a handful of countries. So there's inherently a limited access to investors and to certain markets because of this. I would say that a second really important challenge that startups face is the lack of tailored and specific support to their own needs. Startups it's very different depending on the country you are, the type of startup that you're building, your business model, the access that you have. It's going to be a very different support system that you need. And today, SSOs on the continent and in general have a very cohort-like approach, which is good. It's just it lacks the specific needs. It cannot address the specific needs of each startup individually, and so that is a challenge. But that's also it's just an endless spiral, because those SSOs don't necessarily have the resources or the means to have a very direct approach. So access to resource, whether it's financial or resources in terms of expertise, support, etc., are for me some of the big challenges. Of course, there are others, and well, at Digital Africa, since we're focused on very early stage, we do try to tackle the two aspects. Even though we know it's still going to be limited to the very small tickets that we have, and there's way more startups than there are tickets in terms of and funding in general. So there's never going to be enough funding for every startup. And in terms of support, what we try to do is to have an approach that combines the support that startups might already be receiving from SSOs, with trying to fill a gap there without having an approach that doesn't, like if they've been already trained in investment readiness, let's not do it again, right? It's just like wasting resources and wasting the time of entrepreneurs, which is very valuable. So yeah, maybe that's my take on it.
Oh, that's a really interesting take, actually. I don't know if Fanta, you agree on that, if you have something you'd add to that. For me, that was very complete, but...
Yes, that was very thorough, and I was nodding my head the whole time. I think the work that Digital Africa does is so important and critical, and it really makes a difference in the ecosystem. As collaborators, I really appreciate what you all are doing. So what I can add is that talent is also an area of concern for founders, which which I think is a bit complex and nuanced in the African setting. We've heard this terminology of brain drain, and so what that's referring to is just talent choosing to leave the continent and go work elsewhere, right? And so part of what we like to do is to support our founders to find talent that can really help to scale the business and that has know-how that is necessary for the business. So sometimes that looks like really just getting our hands dirty with the financials for the company so they can be able to properly raise in the next round. And sometimes it looks like helping them to hire a CFO. So we have a really strong network, which allows us to be able to do that. Personally, for me, I've worked and lived in the US, and now I'm based out of Senegal. And I know so many people who are interested in contributing to back home, contributing to the continent. And it's just a matter of helping them to, one, learn about the trends in the ecosystem, the unprecedented level of growth that we're seeing in tech, and connecting them to the companies that they can either be advisors for or be on the executive team for because of the skills that they're able to bring. So that is some of the ways that we try to support our founders around the talent gap. And as was rightfully mentioned, funding can be a big issue. So like I had highlighted, the conversion from seed to Series A is lower in Africa than it is in other parts of the world. And that's where our check comes in. So that is quite an important way for us to engage as well.
Thanks for that, Fanta. Maybe now I turn to Jeanne and ask a bit more about, we mentioned international collaboration as part of SEADE. So what primary challenges do you see startups and organizations facing when collaborating across continent? And yeah, what do you do, or would you recommend to mitigate that?
Yeah, so we see startups and SMEs who work with a lot of different partners across different continents. So I think one thing that is absolutely common for a lot of them is that while they look for international cooperation, their first struggle is actually to find suitable partners for them. So, for example, they know that they want to work with a certain country because that's a country they're interested in, or they know they want to work on a certain area of technology, and because that's what they need to level up their project and their product. But to find these suitable partners is very often the hardest thing. So one of the best things that we can help them for regarding this topic is first give them tools to connect with international partners. You have some matchmaking platform. I think Euroquity is one of them, but you also have tools with the Enterprise Europe network, which can connect. And so the name is Enterprise Europe, but it's actually located in a lot of countries across the world. So that is one way. You have also all the international events where you get to meet potential partners, to do some networking, and then decide if you want to pursue a project together. So I think that this qualified matchmaking is one of the first hardships that they have to overcome. One concern also that we see, because we are talking about innovation and then R&D cooperation, is how they want to deal with the intellectual property of their projects. Of course, when you cooperate with any partner, and it can be someone from the same country, but usually it gets even a bit more complicated when it's a foreign partner. You need to make sure that the partnership is secured. So before you start any project, you need to sign a consortium agreement where you will define exactly what will happen during the project, how you will work together with the other consortium members, what happens if one of them leaves, what happens if someone wants to join, what happens if there is a conflict. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, this can block a lot of companies, and this can actually lead to a lot of difficulties. While if you had thought about it in advance, you can actually settle this in a very efficient way. So I think you need to prepare for the project, and one of the hard things for that is that usually when you apply for funding, you need to ask yourselves all of these questions. But of course, you are completing an application, you're maybe maybe working a bit fast, and you don't really think about what will happen in maybe 4-3 years. You think about how can I get the funding, but you should actually also plan all of these actions, because they will be absolutely essential to the whole continuation of the project, and especially because usually when the innovation cooperation works well, and it happens in the majority of cases, we see that a lot of international partners become commercial partners. So when things go well, you can actually have very successful partnerships for a very long time, but only if you manage to arrange this and settle this very early on. So I think that's these two things maybe where we bring the majority of support to the companies.
Thanks a lot, Jeanne. I don't know, Penelope, have you seen something similar through different programs? Is there something you wanted to add? Oh, we can't hear you.
In terms of the challenges when collaboration between European and African, when you that's
Yeah.
the yes. I would say that, from what we've seen also for the startups in our portfolio, one of the challenges, because a lot of them we have maybe 20%, 30% of them who have one of their have created a French entity or a US entity, etc. One of the challenges that we see as a recurrent one is the regulatory one. It's very different to do business in Africa than doing business in Europe, for instance. I'll give just a quick example. Sometimes, especially when we're talking with startups that deal with a lot of data, which is the case for a lot of AI, fintechs, etc. When working with European investors, for instance, or corporate European partners, etc., there's some requirements on GDPR that are very different in a European context versus an African context. So that can be an issue. It can be mitigated with the right access to expertise, a right also understanding from the European actors of the particular context, depending on the country. And yeah, so that can be one of the challenges. I would say another one, which is I think that's a pretty common challenge in general, is just there's a difference in business culture sometimes, and that's something that if I don't know, it will take time. It will take experience from one side and the other for adaptability and resilience. But business cultures can also be a challenge to foster collaboration. And I think the more learning expeditions, the more interactions, etc., will allow more collaboration, and instead of a one-size-fits-all, kind of an adjusted approach, let's say.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks a lot, Penelope. Maybe final question before we ask you more is about international opportunities. Maybe I'll turn to Fanta. What should startup look at while scaling internationally?
Yeah, if I may also just add quickly to Penelope's points around the scaling from Africa to Europe is I actually find that the European market is more attuned to Africa than the US market. So that's also another consideration where, there's often this conversation about Silicon Valley and this blueprint that the US is able to provide for venture capital. But at the same time, it's still not necessarily ready in understanding Africa, whereas there's more capital coming from Europe. So I think that's also something important to name. Now, to the question around scaling internationally, I think there are many benefits to it, right? So you have FX issues which mean that it's great to diversify revenue streams as a company. So if you're operating in Naira, for instance, it's useful to be having some revenue streams that come from USD, which is often why we have fintech companies channeling remittance dollars, of which is an important avenue to tap into, because as many of you may have seen, whether it's the World Bank or different international forums, African diaspora is contributing around 100 billion in remittance flows to the continent. So that's a huge opportunity. And the fintechs that have been able to capitalize on that, many of them have become unicorns. However, there's then this question of, for those Africans abroad, what else can be built for them? And that's one way a company can then diversify their revenue streams, which is then tapping into the fact that they are now taking advantage of the euro, they're taking advantage of the USD, and that allows your business and company to be hedged against some of the depreciation that we might see in the market. And also, it creates a great branding opportunity for Africa as well when you're scaling internationally, right? So we have companies like Move in Nigeria, who has been able to tap into financing for electric vehicles and grow into Europe. It was based in Lagos and it's scaled internationally. And that really does allow for the narrative around Africa to shift around how Africa is able to contribute more to the global economy. So overall, I do think when it comes to scaling internationally, there's two approaches to look at. There is, how do you solve problems for Africans who are abroad? And then the second being, how do you use your base in Africa to solve a problem and then scale that innovation? And those are two approaches that founders can look at that can benefit their companies and overall the African brand.
Well, thanks a lot, Fanta. I don't know, because you've been working with a lot of companies trying to internationalize it, Jeanne, would you have anything else to add to that?
I mean, I don't think I have much more to add, because I believe many things have already been said. I think my advice would be to consider internationalization very early, because we have many companies that think that they first need to develop and grow and reach a certain stage before they can think about internationalization. But the thing is that we see that it's very often a winning strategy to actually start going global, or at least considering other markets and other countries in your strategy as early as possible. And we now see very young companies, as young as 1 or 2 years old, who are already cooperating with international partners, because it actually helps them so much. Mainly, I would say through two points of view. The first one is that sometimes you need to have a partner because you lack a technology knowledge, and it just so happens that this knowledge is owned by someone else than you, and sometimes it's not in the country you're based in, but in a foreign country. So this is almost an opportunistic way to look at internationalization. But we do know that for many of our companies, once they need the knowledge and they identify the best country for them to cooperate with on an R&D base, it can be very useful. But of course, on an export strategy, international strategy point of view, it's also very key, because sometimes thinking about a foreign country and believing that you can actually go there and start your business there, it's very difficult. You don't have any contacts, you don't know how the country works, and you're not necessarily so welcomed as a company, meaning that you're not going to save the country you're looking for. They already have probably brilliant companies that are doing an excellent job. So what are you bringing to the table? That can be a bit difficult. But the thing is that if you start with international cooperation, and so instead of going full on in a new country, but actually cooperating with a partner, co-developing something, a new product with a partner from this country, when the technology partnership is happening well, then usually this actually will open some connections for you. as I was saying earlier, your R&D partner will become your commercial partner. So now you have a partner, you have access to a network of maybe subcontractors, suppliers, clients, of course. So this can be a very, very helpful way to discover a new target market. So my advice would be to not think as of internationalization as something at the end of your company's life cycle. Once you're ready, you can actually be ready a lot earlier than you think.
That's very interesting. Actually, as a remark, I don't know if, because since you're giving recommendations, maybe moving on to Penelope, do you have recommendations as well for early stage entrepreneurs, such as don't wait for too long before going international because it can be beneficial before?
Yeah, I think a lot of things that you said, Jeanne, I mean, I agree with. Maybe one of them is just like you can do your market research in advance, like really have a comprehensive approach of the markets that you're targeting, secure partnerships, like start talking to people. As Jeanne said, it doesn't need to be when you're ready. It can be earlier on. If it's a country that you have in mind, you can already start talking to relevant people and secure partnerships early, to have to deploy your network earlier on. And I would also say that having some kind of I know I've said it a lot, but having some kind of expert or mentor or a key person that can help you enter, like that sometimes can be very, very useful. So find someone that is going to support you in this endeavor in a way or another, whether it's providing some introductions to certain people, inviting you to the right type of event. This sort of thing can open a lot of doors. So maybe I'll leave it to this.
That sounds fair. Fanta, do you want to add on the same thing?
Yes, happy to add on. So, frankly, a lot of companies, when they pitch, will say something like, we are the Uber of Africa or the Amazon of Africa. And to Penelope's point, that means it's useful for you to reach out to someone who actually works at this company, and the diaspora is at these companies. So I would say the nature of an African company often has this international component that is the diaspora, of which is described as the sixth region of the continent. So tap onto those people because they would probably want to help you, but they just don't know about what you're doing. So I've actually worked with a startup that describes themselves as an Amazon of Africa. He has been watching like different videos on YouTube around how Amazon operates and has been inspired by that. And in meeting him, I realized that I can just put him in touch with the contacts that I have there. I have many friends who are working at Amazon and who are African and who could contribute to the startup. So I would say the diaspora is a resource to tap into, whether it's at the companies that are aligned with what you're building, or potential angel investors, and they just need to hear about what you're doing. So definitely explore what that looks like. And I think some of that does require the sensitizing people to the opportunities in the region. So resources that you can share with your network of people can include Dream VC's program, which helps people to better understand how to invest on the continent. It can include, which actually they have many different resources. So like you can tell people to check out this website, and as you scroll through that website, you're going to see all the different ways that they help with shifting the narrative around participating in the venture ecosystem. So yeah, I would say definitely don't overlook the power that is in that. And we've seen many founders actually start companies in the diaspora like Calendly, and who have also gotten unicorn status, right? And so these are folks who are from Africa who are very dedicated to the continent because it's their place of origin and is one of the homes that they have. And so I think really seeking advice and counsel is useful. And that's a way to open yourself up into the international market. So you as a founder who might be more local, you have your expertise, you have your wisdom from the ground, and they also have their connections. And it's a two-way street of being able to learn from one another. So yeah, that's what I would suggest to look into. And that's why I actually created a list that you can find on my LinkedIn that shares around 120 different resources that founders can look into that are conferences, that are events that are taking place in the US and Europe, and allows them to get a better sense of what's happening in those ecosystems and be able to connect with folks on the ground there. So it includes everything from university conferences and events to funding opportunities like the Google Black Founders Fund, like Plug and Play. And there's so many resources that are out there. And part of the Africa access to capital funding gap is being addressed by the diaspora. These are people who are working at these companies who are of African origin and who are actually pushing internally for there to be more financing in Africa. So I think that's one of the ways that you can engage, and I'm happy to share the link to the resources in the chat.
Yes, please do so. Even for me, I am interested. So anyway, by the way, to anyone attending, if you do want more information because you didn't have time to ask a question, whatever, feel free to reach out to me. You've got my email because I've emailed you all, and I'll follow up with the replay of the session and a bit more information. So if you want more information about any of what we heard today, going from access to funding, finding new partners, clarifying the terms of partnership, all of the subjects that we've seen today, please feel free to send me an email. I'll redirect you to either Jeanne, Penelope, or Fanta. And yeah, I think the main takeaway for today is to try to look for partners and local partners if you can, and people to support you and that know the ecosystem and that know the location. I think everyone agreed on that. So I'll let it be the word of the end. Thanks again, Jeanne, Penelope, Fanta, for coming for this discussion. For me, it was very insightful. I think it was very insightful for everyone. And yeah, I'll follow up with the replay and all of that.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bah, bravo.